So I'm going to read Psalm 26. Vindicate me, O Lord, for I have walked in my integrity, and I have trusted in the Lord without wavering. Prove me, O Lord, and try me. Test my heart and mind. For your steadfast love is before my eyes, and I walk in faithfulness to you. I do not sit with the worthless, nor do I consort with hypocrites. I hate the company of evildoers, and will not sit down with the wicked. I wash my hands in innocence, and go around your altar, O Lord, singing aloud a song of thanksgiving and telling you all your wondrous deeds. O Lord, I love the house in which you dwell, and the place where your glory abides. Do not sweep me away with sinners, nor my life with the bloodthirsty, those in whose hands are evil devices, and whose right hands are full of bribes. But as for me, I walk in my integrity. Redeem me and be gracious to me. My foot stands on level ground. In the great congregation, I will bless the Lord. That doesn't work. I confess that. Right. I confess I didn't read this until just now, and I'm thinking as I'm reading this, going, this doesn't work with that passage. But anyway,
well, it kind of does, but it's hard to read it as a legitimate prayer.
Yeah.
It feels manipulative.
Surprise, surprise.
I know.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Man, come on.
We didn't know you had started.
That's okay.
There's one and
great. Thank you. Okay. So, there's not a whole lot of theology, not a lot of comments to be made. So I'm hoping to maybe get through 2 chapters today. And if I do that, if I did my counting right, we could do 1 chapter per week, and we'll finish by the end of the year.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Fine, we must grow and go back.
That's it.
It's just the
Hebrew
prophets. It's not even the Hebrew Bible. This is just the prophets. I got 2 more of the same size. It's the whole Hebrew Bible. Yeah, the footnotes of this thing are just, this is verses, this is footnotes. Yeah.
His book of Samuel is.
Yeah.
I'll read that next week.
Okay. So, what do we remember from last week? What was happening?
Absalom got to come home, but not to see the king until near the very end.
And then when he did see the king, what did he say? What did he ask for? Or am I getting into maybe
Yeah.
Okay.
He asked, he did burn Joab's fields, so Joab would.
At the end, the last part, he just kissed him.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and I want you to remember the kiss, because there's going to be another kiss later, and it's going to be like, okay, is this just the writer being, using a literary, remember? Flashback and so anyway. So if somebody would read, I'm just gonna kind of cut this in. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start off with just a short little bit. Would somebody read the first 6 verses of chapter 15?
I'm sorry.
Just take it.
We were talking about it's crochet day.
Oh.
She's got
Yeah, her shoes are equal crochet.
I wore my first.
On the ceiling.
Okay, so
you say,
chapter 15, verses 1 through 6.
15, 1 through 6. I'll do that.
Okay.
In the course of time, Absalom provided himself with a chariot and horses, and with 50 men to run ahead of him. He would get up early and stand by the side of the road leading to the city gate. Whenever anyone came with a complaint to be placed before the king for a decision, Absalom would call out to him, "What town are you from?" He would answer, "Your servant is from one of the tribes of Israel." Then Absalom would say to him, "Look, your claims are valid and proper, but there is no representative of you of the king to hear you. And Absalom would add, if only I were appointed judge of the land, then everyone who has a complaint or case could come to me, and I would see that they would receive justice. Also, whenever anyone approached him to bow down before him, Absalom would reach out his hand, take hold of him, and kiss him. Absalom behaved in this way toward all the Israelites who came to the king asking for justice. And so he stole the hearts of the people of Israel.
So the king kisses him at the end of 14, and now Absalom is kissing. In both cases, we're not sure about the sincerity of the kiss. And the word and Absalom would reach out his hand and take hold of him. And that taking hold of was the same word used when Amnon took hold of Tamar. Not sure the significance of that. So Absalom is not being a good son here. He's scheming and conniving and promising. He's politicking.
He's getting back at daddy.
Yeah, he's politicking. Okay. Now, if someone would read through, and we're going to read the whole chapter, I'm just cutting it in two pieces because it's a bit. Read through verse 21.
We can do it.
Okay.
At the end of 4 years, Absalom said to the king, may I have leave now to go to Hebron to fulfill a vow there that I made to the Lord? For when I lived in Geshur in Aram, I made this vow. If the Lord brings me back to Jerusalem, I will become a worshiper of the Lord in Hebron. The king answered, certainly you may go. So he set off for Hebron at once. Absalom sent runners through all the tribes of Israel with this message. As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then say, Absalom is the king in Hebron. 200 men accompanied Absalom from Hebron. They were invited and went in all innocence, knowing nothing of the affair. Absalom also sent to summon Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor, from Gilo, his city, where he was offering the customary sacrifices. The conspiracy gathered strength, and Absalom's supporters increased in number. When the news reached David that the men of Israel had transferred their allegiance to Absalom, he said to those who were with him in Jerusalem, we must get away at once, for there will be no escape from Absalom for any of us. Make haste, or else he will soon be upon us and bring disaster on us, showing no mercy to anyone in the city. The king's servant said to him, as your majesty thinks best, we are ready. I'm going through 21?
Yeah.
Okay. When the king departed, all his household followed him except 10 concubines, whom he left in charge of the house. I read ahead, so and there was a story that I didn't know. At the far house, the king and all the people who were with him halted. His own servants then stood beside him, while the Kerathite and the Pelathite guards and the Ittai from the 600 Gittites under him marched past the king. The king said to Ittai the Gittite, are you here too? Why are you coming with us? Go back and stay with the new king, for you are a foreigner, and what is more, an exile from your own country. You came only yesterday, and today you must be compelled to share my wanderings. I do not know where I am going. Go back home and take your countrymen with you, and may the Lord ever be your steadfast friend. Ittai swore to the king, as the Lord lives, your life upon it, wherever you may be, in life or in death, I, your servant, will be there.
Okay. I want to go ahead and read the rest of the chapter, and then we'll come back and talk. Who wants to read the rest of the chapter?
We'll do that.
Well, yes.
Or you go ahead, bud. You go ahead.
starting with 22.
Sure, the middle of the tent here, probably. As the Lord lives, and as my Lord the King lives, whatever place that my Lord the King may be, whether for death or for life, there your servant will be. And David said, go and cross over. And Ittai crossed over, and all his men, and all the children who were with him. And all the land was weeping loudly, and all the people were crossing over. And the king was crossing over the Wadi Kidron, and all the people were crossing over along the road to the wilderness. And look, Zadok and all the Levites were also with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of God. And they set down the ark of God, and Abiathar came up until all the people had finished crossing over from the town. And the king said to Zadok, bring back the ark of God to the town. Should I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and let me see it in its abode. And should he say thus, I want no part of you, let him do to me what is good in his eyes. And the king said to Zadok the priest, do you see? Go back to the town in peace, and Amon's your son, and Jonathan, son of Abiathar, your two sons with you. See, I shall be tarrying in the steeps of the wilderness until word from you reaches me to inform me. And Zadok and Abiathar with him brought back the ark of God to Jerusalem, and they stayed there. And David was going up the slope of Olives, going up weeping, his head uncovered, and he walked barefoot, and all the people who were with him, every one with his head uncovered, went up weeping the while. And David, it was told, saying, Ahithophel is among the plotters of Absalom. And David said, thwart, pray, the counsel of Ahithophel, O Lord. And David had come to the summit where one would bow down to God, and look, coming toward him was Hushai the Archite, his tunic. Right there, he put thorn and earth on his head. And David said, if you cross over with me, you will be a burden to me. But if you go back to the town and say to Absalom, your servant, O king, I will be. Your father's servant I always was, and now I am your servant. So you shall overturn Ahithophel's counsel for me. And are not Zadok and Abiathar the priests there with you? And so whatever you hear from the king's house, you shall tell Zadok and to Abiathar the priests. Look, there with them are two sons, Amon's, who is Zadok's, Jonathan, who is Abiathar's, and you shall send me by their hand whatever you hear. And Hushai, David's friend, came to the city as Absalom was coming.
Okay.
Sorry about all the butchering of names.
We don't know any better. So David has fallen. This is the low point in his reign. Absalom has asked for permission to go to Hebron, and there's a significance in terms of the timing of it. You know, he killed Amnon, and so he comes to David and says, can I go to Hebron and worship the Lord? Because I promised the Lord that after I paid my penance, and the penance was 7 years, and so he was in Geshur for 3 and Jerusalem for 4. So he's done his 7 years of penance. And now he wants to go to Hebron, and that's the story he's telling. Of course, he's taking 200 people with him who have no idea what he's doing. So that when he does become king, he's got some innocent people that hopefully David's not going to try to kill.
It's almost like a human shield.
Yes, exactly. Taking a human shield. So rather than fight, David just goes, "Oh well, I'm leaving town." And his supporters go, "We'll fight." David's like, "No, I'm done." So he gives up. I don't know if he's depressed. I don't know if he's sick. He just goes, "I don't care. I'm done." And leaves. And then once he gets out, and I may be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but once he gets out in the wilderness, he kind of comes to and starts scheming again. But during this chapter, he's just real lackadaisical. And
But at least he does say, he sends the ark back and he says if God will do what God will do.
Yeah.
To me, if I don't deserve
Yes.
it, I won't get it. So he's still putting his faith in whatever it's God's will.
Yeah.
For him.
But
But
he
he's
just
not willing to go like his son.
Ark with them.
right, and thinking that would guarantee their
Right.
success.
They thought, we'll have the ark with us and he
Yeah.
can't lose this battle if we have the ark with us. He said, no, not going to use that.
But so he leaves the ark and he leaves 10 concubines, which will come into play.
Yeah.
So,
How'd you like to be the ones left behind? I read, I mean, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I can guess.
um, so he does all that, and then at the end of the chapter, what's his name? The name I don't remember.
Ushahi.
Yeah, what she said. He comes up and says, "I'm here to support you," and David goes, "You go on." And he comes up with a scheme and sends this guy to Absalom and says, "I want you to be a double agent. I want you to go tell Absalom that you used to be my friend, but you see how things are. You want to support the winner. You want to support the real king. And then send word back to me about what's going on. And also do what you can, because one of my former advisors really has turned his allegiance. I want you to do what you can to negate his advice."
Is that the hip booth?
Yeah. He actually was a turncoat. So he's starting to come back to his old cunning, sneaky, conniving self. Okay. Anything else that y'all saw? One thing in terms of the people that David took with him, he took, I want to say 600, and remember he had 600 people with him when he was running from Saul earlier. He takes 600 again with him, and these men are all mercenaries. So they only have allegiance to Saul. There's no other possible tribal loyalties. There's no possible loyalty to Absalom. David's paying them. David's the person that they're going to support. And I've never thought about that in terms of mercenaries. He's not worried about split loyalties. I always thought, mercenaries were just, I always thought that was a bad thing to be, but in terms of the strategy, I can see it making some sense.
Right. No family members, no tribal members from the Hebrew tribe, but every foreigners.
Yeah. We don't care about internal politics.
Right.
Oh, and in terms of geography, when it talks about him crossing the Kidron Brook, that's the traditional border of the city before the walls had been built. Before Jerusalem was the great big thing that we think of when we think of Jerusalem. So as he's leaving, that brook had that.
I thought it was interesting that he ends up on the Mount of Olives, reaping. I mean, it's almost like
Yeah.
it's a foreshadowing of maybe a little bit.
Maybe, but also, Solomon raises temples to pagan gods on the Mount of Olives for all of his foreign wives. And so, the footnote, I don't remember that footnote in here. They're wondering if the biblical writers are trying to offset some of that pagan worship that was there by saying that David was weeping there and worshiping. Because Solomon's going to put a lot of foreign temples there when he comes to power. I didn't either till I did this.
Going back to earlier in 15, where, these other guys were like, oh, no, what's his name? Ittai, the Gittite.
Mhm.
And it just sort of struck me how often there are foreigners, so to speak, who are throughout this.
Yeah,
So it's not just, there's a lot of intermingling.
yeah.
There's a lot of foreign wives.
Mhm.
David has a lot of foreign wives. Solomon, foreign wives. There's foreigners coming and
Foreigners going.
pledging allegiance to David. And so there's a lot of coming and going. So there's a lot of fighting too. But there's a lot of intermingling.
Yeah.
So I wonder if some of the current day folks would think about that, what impact that might have.
Yeah, and I'm thinking,
Historically, there's a lot of intermingling.
yeah, and I'm thinking, later in history, the story of Ruth, and the last verse of the story of that book is that David was
Preparing for the king.
talking about King David, not Pastor David. It gets confusing right here. That Ruth was the great great grandmother of David, with the implication that David being the great 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 grandfather of Jesus. And the reason for that, the book of Ruth was written after they came back from being exiled to Babylon. And when they came back from Babylon, the leaders are sitting around trying to say, what on earth did we do to justify God letting us be exiled? We must have really, really, really messed up. And one of the things that they came up with was, we've got too much intermingling of outsiders. So they actually, and I don't remember which group, somebody passed a law that said, unless you could prove that you were 100% Jew back 10 generations, you were going to be kicked out of the country, because that intermingling in their minds had been what had displeased God so much that they were in exile.
For having a replay.
Yeah.
A lot of this intermingling and the wives and so forth, they're probably, many of them were just people who were captured and slaves and brought back
Yes.
various places. So it's not like they chose to intermingle so much.
Right. And so the story of Ruth was written as a way to say, not even King David could have proved his Jewishness. Because when they passed that law, it tore families apart, as you can imagine. I mean, how many of us can go back 10 generations and know anything about, even with all the technology we have to do genealogy? So the
And
story,
sometimes when you do find out, you're a little surprised what you find,
yes, and the surprise is not always pleasant, especially if you live in Australia. Although now that's just it's become a badge of honor now, because everybody's
We're criminals.
yeah, that's true. But that the story of Ruth was a way to say, lighten up, people. You're overdoing it. We're all a result of intermingling. It's been going on for generations. It's no big deal. God really doesn't care. So, really, so
So we need that message still.
yes, we do. Yeah, we and that comment also makes me think about the way things were when we were growing up. And I heard this in one of my great courses lectures recently, that in the 50s and 60s, people took cultural mores and put them at the same level with biblical laws. You know, that you need to be dressed up in your Sunday dress or you're bad. And that had the same level of emphasis as living a good Christian life. You know, there was no differentiation. I'm sure my grandmother and my mother would, if they were in our congregation, and I have to fight to stop their voice in my head when I see the way some people are dressed when they come to church, especially the young folks.
I was brought up wearing the best clothes, you know, your best.
Yeah,
My dad wore a suit. He still did to the group. He died. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean that's what they believed in and how they were brought up.
And when the missionaries went out, they didn't just take the faith; they took the Western culture.
Yeah.
It's some
Yeah.
damage to-
Yeah, we were watching that series. Was it Yellowstone? Where they showed the Christians in the Indian schools and trying to beat the Indian culture out of them.
Yes.
Yeah, revelation that.
Joseph Conrad wrote a story, The Three Ships. And it's about a group of missionaries that go to a Pacific island, and they have a group of people and they convert them to Christianity and teach them the Lord's Prayer, and then they get ready to sail away. And as they get ready to sail away, you know, they're back on the ship and the people are all there together and they're going to say the prayer they learned, which was the Lord's Prayer, and they can't remember all the words. So they say, well, maybe this one time God will forgive us. So they pray to their God and ask him for the ability to get to the ship. So they walk across the water to the ship to ask the Christian missionaries, what was that prayer again? And that was Conrad's comment on Christian, you know, the Christianization of, you know, cultures. You know, he also did Heart of Darkness, so we could see how he felt about all those things. But I always thought that that one and Mark Twain's, you know, the wartime prayer.
The wartime prayer.
Yeah, when the guy comes in and prays that God be on our side, rip,
Protect our men, slaughter everybody else.
yeah, like and rip the hearts out of the mothers and stuff. And then when he's finished with this horrific prayer, he just walks out. And then everybody decided he was crazy. You know, he said, "Let me pray from the other side."
Well, and David's sermon today is all about that Great Commission and how you can get it confused with, you know, what you think the Great Commission might be is going out there and doing this kind of thing versus what Christ's mission is.
I don't know much about it, but there's a huge contingent, I guess, of Christian nationalism or something.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Mark Twain's work.
Yeah.
It's pretty frightening.
Yes. It's interesting. There's a little girl at the school, and I meet with her by herself. I usually meet kids in a group. This child is so pitiful that I meet with her by herself also, trying to build up her self-esteem, her self-confidence. She asks me repeatedly, am I getting on your nerves yet? Am I in your way? Because that's what she hears at home all the time. So I've spent the entire year working with her and talking about how beautiful and brilliant I think she is and how much I enjoy our time together. And Thursday she goes, could we color today? And I said, sure, we can draw in color. She goes, you draw a picture of me and I'll draw a picture of you. I said, okay. So I drew flowers and then drew a picture of her. In the flowers, and I wrote, you know, this little girl's name. is as pretty as all the flowers. And she looked at it and she drew a picture of me and she wrote, she has trouble with my name, Angela, so she calls me Angel. Angel is as pretty as me. And I thought, oh my gosh, we finally to the part where she
Yes.
she's in pretty.
Yeah, yes.
And it just my eyes teared up. That isn't that doing what Christ sent us out to do? Isn't this the great mission? I may not be able to change the world, but hopefully, little by little, I'm changing the life of that little girl so she knows God loves her through me.
Yeah,
testimony.
That's right.
Well, I think about David's sermon last week where he, he called us the Easter people because
Right.
it's hard to stay positive because the world is, I get depressed every time I turn on the news or read the paper. But that's what we can be. We can be the Easter people, one person at a time, and that's where we can make a difference. So, yeah.
And where does Easter come from? Estros, a god, a pagan god.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
No.
Yes. That, was taking on a pagan religion and from Estros.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where
Yeah.
you get Easter. I says, well, how did we get the name Easter? How did Easter associate with Christ
Yeah. Yeah.
and his resurrection? And it's pagan.
Interesting.
So I don't know about being an Easter people literally,
Yeah.
but an Easter people, the way that we describe
Yes.
Easter now,
Yeah.
we've given
Right.
it a new term. We've given it a new definition.
I remind myself every day when I get up, when I see the news and listen to people, that a lot of things haven't changed, but things are not always so happy right now. But God didn't change overnight. God's still the same. And I need to proceed as if God's going to still be the same tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. And that He knows my name, He knows my heart, and that whatever, it's kind of like David said, what's going to be done is going to be done. God be with me.
Yeah. There was the Lenten book study that Pastor David led was really excellent. And I remember one of the last Wednesday nights where we met, Jesus's disciples were talking about, so, when is all this going to happen? When, it was before Jesus had been crucified. What we're waiting for the big moment. And Jesus, and they were talking about when is the end of the world coming, this sort of thing. And Jesus would, per usual, would not give a direct answer, but he did.
Soon.
Yeah, he talked a lot about how the world was still going to be consumed with war and violence and all these terrible things. And that was sometimes misinterpreted by generations of thinking when we see war and violence, that means the end of the world. That wasn't what Christ was saying. He's just like, this is life. It's violent. There's hatred. There's war. There's disease. There's all kinds of nasty stuff going on. But you need to focus on loving each other. That's the commission. It's the world is not going to change. It's not going to suddenly become a wonderful place to live. But as Christians, we need to focus on loving people and despite all the stuff that's going on, so it was
Because when that happens, then we're putting into our life a line from the Lord's Prayer, thy will be done on earth here is, like, thy kingdom come. And it came.
Yeah.
Like maybe not the new world, but His kingdom came. And they showed us.
Yeah.
And I'm not so good at doing it. And, I've gotten a whole new appreciation of who David is. But I still feel like, but by the grace of God, what if someone wrote a book about my life and all the things I've done? You know, maybe people who right now like me a lot, after they read this book are gonna go, oh. I don't know why we thought she was a Christian. Because only God knows my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and every time I ask to be forgiven, we get to start anew.
Mhm.
I laugh and say about my mother who had dementia. Every night she went to bed, she woke up in the morning, shook her head, and her etch-a-sketch brain took over, and we started on a brand new blank page.
Yeah.
God's my etch-a-sketch. Every morning I wake up and ask forgiveness. Help me do a good day. And I get a brand new page. And I've been forgiven. I'm forgiven.
Yeah, and I don't know why this popped up, but the old saying that, the church is not a country club for saints, it's a hospital for sinners. Came into my mind about that.
I just wanted to chime in on one other thing, this idea about the intermingling of different groups, and I agree that that is clearly something the United States is struggling with big time right now. But what's so interesting is I work with a professor who is Native American, and he studies Native American governance, and and there's a big movement in amongst Native Americans for what they call blood quantum. So in order to prove that you can belong to a tribe, you have to be able to trace your ancestry and have a certain amount of pure Native American blood in order to be a member of the tribe. And some tribes have been literally kicking people out because they don't meet the blood quantum. And my friend and professor who I work with is very opposed to this. He says, you know, being a member of a tribe is about more than being able to prove that you have X percentage of Native blood in you. So there's a big debate. Even, I mean, it seems like this is just human nature. Whether you're white, whether you're Native American, whether you're, you know,
If you had just 1% of black blood,
Yeah.
you were considered
Black. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and it
it's
was like,
the same thing. It's just been this human nature of, you know, you've got to be able to prove, and the significance for getting kicked out of the tribe is that, like, let's say David, my friend, thinks a lot of it's just based on greed, because let's say you have theoretically 600 people in a tribe. Well, if you can eject 300 of them and just have 300, then those 300 have a lot more resources. They don't have to share the resources between 600 people. Now, the money that's coming in from the casino or the benefits that are coming in from the federal government are just dispersed between 300 people instead of 600 people. So this is why it's happening. But it's, you know, he says it's just greed. It's just people how to be greedy, and that we should think not of being able to prove our racial heritage, but being able to, how did you grow up in the, you know, in a family and in a community, and that's what makes you part of a tribe in his mind. But it's just interesting that all around the world these cultures have the same debate, you know.
and power. What was it that said power? It's such an aphrodisiac to people. You know, just having to have that power. And it just is like heady. You know, once you get a little bit, then you want a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then eventually it's like, I want all the time.
Okay, but it's I'm thinking about something one of my professors in art school told me once, a story. It's tribal business. You know, it's about survival. It's about defending yourself against other people. But I just had a flash of you talking about being, I think he was out in Washington State or somewhere. There was a horrific flood. All these people were, you know, blacks, Mexicans, whatever. I'm making that up. I don't know who they were, but they were all different people who would be separated. But in that instant, this flood was threatening everybody, and they were all together throwing sandbags and saving each other, and they came together. And then after the flood subsided, they all went back and divided.
9/11. 9/11, we were all Americans. Now we're far enough out from 9/11, now we're back to our little.
Well, do you ever remember seeing the movie called Starman?
Yes.
And he said, you know, she says, what do you like about us? Because he comes from outer space or whatever. And he says, you are at your best when things are at their worst. You come together when things are at their worst.
From my hospital experiences, I say all the people who want to pitch all these non-white, pure Americans, as though we're pure American, out. I hope you never have to go to the hospital.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or if you do, you know, I hope only the specific people will help you. No, I don't want to do that. There are wonderful people out there. I don't care where they come from. They've been inside of me and outside of me and saved my life. They're great people.
I'd also, I just think, well, this is my personal feeling, but I find it incredibly ironic that the only people who are indigenous to this part of the world are brown skinned people. The rest of us aren't.
Yeah.
So,
Native Americans.
yeah.
Yeah.
The people we're deporting are the ones who were indigenous to this.
Who in their own religions teach me a lot about my
Okay, I want to get at least a little bit into the next chapter because there are a couple of just sections. And since y'all have been talking, I'll just read this a little bit. I'm just going to read the first 4 verses. And when David had crossed over a little beyond the summit, look, Ziba, Mephibosheth's lad, was there to meet him with a yoke of saddled donkeys, and on them 200 loaves of bread, and 100 raisin cakes, and 100 of summer fruit, and a jug of wine. And the king said to Ziba, what would you do with these things? And Ziba said, the donkeys are for the king's household to ride upon, and the bread and the summer fruit for the lads to eat, and the wine for the exhausted to drink in the wilderness. And the king said, and where is your master's son? And Ziba said to the king, why, he is staying in Jerusalem, for he has said, today the house of Israel will give back to me my father's kingdom. And the king had said to Ziba, look, everything of Mephibosheth is yours. And Ziba said, I am prostrate. May I find favor in your eyes, my lord the king. Okay, now do you remember who these people are?
He's the little, Mephibosheth is the little lame boy.
Right.
That's absolute.
Saul's son.
Son.
So as chaos,
No.
Yes.
Saul's Jonathan's son.
Jonathan's son.
Jonathan's
Right.
son.
Yes, Jonathan. So Absalom has everything in total chaos. And so this descendant of Saul is going to take advantage of things. So Ziba is his servant. And we met him a few chapters ago. And he just happens to be taking provisions to whatever his name is. And David runs into him and goes, what's this? And Ziba, looking after his own skin, goes, it's yours, my lord.
See you
Yeah.
in church.
And actually, I was there at 8:45. You watched.
I love to see you in church.
So he's like, and so David in return says, okay, everything that I gave Shibboleth is now yours. Yeah, this I was trying to take it because remember he had the kid dining at his table. Okay, this kid's turning against me. I'm going to turn against him. I'm taking away everything I gave to him. It's yours now. Woo. Yeah. So the intrigue continues.
Intrigue.
Yes.